Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this fall webinar. We're very delighted here to have a discussion about clinical trials. Maybe not just limited to oncology, but just in general concept here. And we're very fortunate to be joined by two very outstanding panelists who I've known for a long time and being my friends and mentor. I always find great inspiration from them. First one is Dr. John Liu from Pfizer. He joined Seagen, who eventually became Pfizer after being a faculty for some time at USC. He's interested in GU oncology, and he'll bring us perspective from more of a industrial standpoint. And then Dr. Ronan Hsieh, he's a medical oncology currently at Swedish Oncology, but prior to that, he was a GI oncology faculty at Fresh Hodge. And so he'll apparently tell us more about how he sees clinical trial from academia or from a practicing physician standpoint. And again, thank you those for joining us and sharing an insight with us today. So let me go through the outline, but we'll start with the clinical trial one-on-one from the basic and what components in clinical trial and what's different aspect of trial involved, and then moving forward to more sophisticated or further discussion about trials, from the study design standpoint, to operational data analysis and current challenges and future perspective. But first, there will be a few more slides after this, but I want to invite Dr. Hsieh to kind of give us an overview of what is it like what is clinical trial? Maybe not just limited to oncology, but just what's clinical trial in general, and what some of the people that required to make the clinical trial successful.
Ronan, are you talking on me?
Oh, yeah, no, I have to apologize here. So I actually got a phone call like basically 5 to 10 seconds ago, and it was a spam, so I missed your live 5 to 10 seconds. Sorry about that.
No
Could you repeat the question? Yeah.
No, I was just inviting you to see if you could start with telling us about all the different roles involved in clinical trial. Apparently beyond physician just play a small role here, and beyond physician, there's so many different functions that's so essential for us to run a clinical trial. I want would you mind waiting on that?
Yeah, so there are, lots of people involved in running clinical trial, right? Before clinical trial started, right, there are people involved with regulatory, contracting, financial, right? So somebody need to make sure the budget is well covered by the sponsor, and they need to, do some paperwork, fill in some forms to make sure, the trial meets these regulatory standard, okay? There's also contracting with sponsor, right? There's some negotiation, give or take, and finally reach agreement. So that's a pre-clinical trial operation phase, basically, financial, contracting, regulatory. And after that, there's research coordinator, obviously under the supervision of research manager. So research coordinator will screen the patient, help the physician sign the informed consent, and also track the delivery of drugs, make sure the patient's compliance, make sure that imaging is ordered, drugs are taken by the patient, things like that, right? And also recording those data. There's data, scientists or data management, and make sure data is clean, and make sure, every time the sponsor has a question or specific term is data query, then you answer those query. Then let's say patient has some adverse event, then you need to record the grading of the adverse event, the attribution, whether it's probably or possibly or not related to the study drugs, right? You have to give attribution. And I think that's about. Obviously, there's a research pharmacist, right, delivering drugs, make sure there's a placebo. The packages, like I would say, well made, things like that, and then store in the correct temperature. Also all sort of things. And so basically, in summary, there's regulatory, financial, contract team, research coordinator, research manager, data scientist, and then research pharmacist. And there might be more, depending on the institution, but it's a big team. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think I would like to invite John also. I know for each role at a clinical side, there's always sort of a corresponding role in industry. I want to have John to sort of weigh in and supplement that.
Yeah. So I think Ronan, I mean, most of the people that Ronan mentioned is on the side level, from industry perspective, they are more related to operation. So if you see like all the functions that are listed there, so actually most of the coordination with the site are sort of under the umbrella of clinical operation. This is obviously one of the biggest organization in any pharmaceutical company. However, I also want to highlight that there's this clinical trial is just the end. I would say, I mean, not the end, but I mean, it's the end of the drug development. It's like the end product of the drug development, actually. So if you think about it, it's just when we actually bring a drug to patient or on our way of bringing a drug to the patient through investigators, physicians, pharmacists, all those, there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. So that's why I listed out here. So that I want to start from the beginning. So from research, right? So even like academia, they have academic research, like where this drug come from. So I mean, typically you think of like, for example, like 20 years ago when Gleevec was invented, like somehow this this magic molecule was developed in academia and then sort of partner with the industry and then start clinical trial. But these days, drug development is much more sophisticated. I mean, these days, just because our technology gets so good. So nowadays, I mean, even in the research department of Pfizer, right, we have a very big organization. So even in the research department, they are splitting out. So target identification is one thing. So for example, like TIGIT, right? So we all know that TIGIT did not work out, but when it was developed, right, we want to target TIGIT to improve our immunotherapy. Then there is a group to study this TIGIT biology. So this group is like target identification. So this group will sort of make it like when you want to target TIGIT pathway, it does not mean that you're going to target TIGIT. You're going to use an antibody to target TIGIT, right? So there's also a possibility that you go after it as a small molecule, or you can target upstream or downstream pathway, whatever. So the entire study of this preclinical aspect at Pfizer is like there's a whole group called target identification. So in order for us to get to a prototype drug, there's a team of work. And then after we have the prototype drug, that drug is further optimized. So for example, if it's an antibody, then we have this called antibody campaign. So basically, you will just screen out like hundreds of antibody to identify the best one in terms of their affinity profile, all these, right? And then there's also this chemistry team to do like even modification of the antibody, right? So you want to switch out the Fc portion so that you want to enhance its immune activation, or you want to make it silent to decrease the unwanted immune activation. So there's a lot of fine tuning on there. So we call it medicinal chemistry. So it's like there's another group called medicinal chemistry. I didn't even list it there. So, and then after that, there's CMC. So CMC is also a very big function in, I don't even know if it's belong to research, to be honest, but CMC is like chemistry, something chemistry and molecule or something. Anyway, I don't even know what it stands for. But the gist of it is that they are creating the chemical engineering aspect of the drug. Okay, so for example, if you're working on an antibody, right? So you're going to produce antibody in the kilogram. So I mean, if you do it in the lab, right? So you do some hybridoma and you maybe get like a couple milligrams of antibody. But we are talking about like 1,000 times bigger, like 10,000 times bigger. So these antibodies need to be reliably reproduced in tanks, right? So they need like a 1,000 kilogram tank to produce antibody. And then after the antibody, right, you still need to do modification. So all the steps need to happen in the tank. So transforming the antibody in the lab to an actual workable process that can be mass produced, that's the job of CMC. So they are not really producing, but they are creating the roadmap for us to mass produce. So that's another function. I mean, for a lot of biotech, the biotech may not produce antibody themselves, but they definitely still need to have CMC department in-house because nobody's going to help you do that. And then there's obviously PK/PD, right? So even after, I mean, even before the first patient dose in the monkey, we need to know like the pharmacodynamic and pharmacokinetics of the drug. And then after the patient is tested, after the first in human, we still get the blood to check the PK so that we understand how the drug is being metabolized. So that's I would consider that part like the R&D, the R part of the R&D organization. And the D organization is where most of the physicians sits on. So obviously clinical development is like us, like Tian and myself. We basically are deciding what clinical trial is designed, and then we decide how the drug is being developed. For example, like you have a new drug, for example, like you have TIGIT, but which kind of patient to be tested, what indication, specifically what is the inclusion and exclusion criteria of the trial. So those things are being developed in clinical development department. So that we can talk about that for a couple of days if we continue to dig that in, because that's all I'm doing every day. But there are also other functions, right? So safety, or we call that like a pharmacovigilance. So that's a whole group of people that if you think about clinical development as the gas pedal, pharmacovigilance team is the brake. So they need to constantly remind you what is our safety signal that is being observed, what we need to, when we need to develop like extra steps to ensure patient safety, and then they need to report all the like safety events to the agency, and so they are essentially helping us keep an eye on the side effect aspect of things, right? If you read a clinical trial paper, I mean, if you read an early phase clinical trial paper, right? So actually in the beginning, they usually start from a safety table before they actually present any efficacy at all, right? So those are important. And then a lot of time they are trying to evaluate the safety via a very small sample. So they need to be very careful, very sensitive. There are also a group of people that is very specific on like how you describe the events. I mean, they don't interact with investigator like Ronan, so you never see those people, but they will just go after us and say like, you need to talk to the physician. This is not related. You need to verify that, right? So yeah, safety, and then there's this regulatory, right? Regulatory function is also extremely important, especially in the late phase. But even in the early phase, there are our counterpart with the regulatory agency. So for example, like for a new drug, before we can start a clinical trial, we need to register this clinical trial with FDA. And this process in US is called IND, right? Investigational New Drug. And in the rest of the country, it's called CTA, clinical trial something application. So this process is handled by regulatory. So we need to sort of make sure that this trial is well designed so that the agency approve us to even start on doing that. And the clinical operation is obviously mostly like a whole group of people to interact with the investigator, pharmacist, research coordinator, research nurse. So there's a whole group of people who is interacting with the site in order to ensure that our trial is being conducted properly. And then there's another thing we call it, it's another group called biometrics. So this is actually an interesting group that I actually find that they are doing things that is extremely important, but in the, I mean, when we, what is that better word? So I think this is actually the group that is making the industry trial very different from the academic trials. So so statistics, right? Industry has a statistics person, and academia has a statistics person, fine. But there's a whole group of data management. Sometimes, like for example, for a phase 3 study, we have like 3 or 4 data manager. So, and then we also have like scientists who do like just data cleaning. So that's why the quality, I mean, now I'm not saying the trials is different, but the data cleaning, like the data cleaning aspect of things is very different between the industry sponsored study and academic run study. And then also this level of data management also differ from company to company. That's something that I also realized. So yeah, some company just has a more strict rule on data cleaning, while some don't. I mean, we can also talk about that later, but it's just a fascinating difference. Drug supply, right? Drug supply, I mean, it sounds very nuanced, but it's actually very, it's also a group of people, like usually 2, 3 of them, like working behind the scene to make sure that all the drugs are shipped on time, right? Drug can expire, drug can have the temperature excursion, so that can no longer be used, but we still need to make sure that if some site suddenly tell us that the drug is, their drug expired or has a temperature excursion that cannot be used, then we need to supply them timely. So that's another group of people. So this is the R&D, right? And then beside the clinical, slightly outside the clinical trial, there are also this commercial folks, medical affairs folks. I mean, commercial folks obviously is not really doing anything with the clinical trial. They just use our clinical trial data to sell our product, but but they have a lot of say on what indication we go after. Actually, this I mean, there's another slide later about how a trial is being designed, but commercial has a lot of say before the trial is started, and then it has a lot of say after the trial is conducted. So yeah, I mean, obviously, right? Like commercial, I mean, selling drug is the most important is the most important outcome for any drug development. And medical affairs is important. Like they are our diplomats, right? So pharmaceutical companies, we have a lot of medical affairs folks talking to different prescribers, talking to key opinion leaders to get like insights about like what is important, what data need to be generated, and how to best design a trial based on a potential landscape change several years down the road. And HEOR is also an interesting function that has a lot of opportunities for anyone who is seeking their job in the industry. So actually, HEOR, I mean, most of people may never heard of it. but these are basically, if you see like some posters, like, I mean, if you go to meetings and you see some industry sponsored poster looking at epidemics, so those are being generated by HEOR, because who knows like how many patients are in first line GRF, first line colorectal cancer is probably easy to know, right? So you have like whatever number of metastatic colorectal cancer, you know how many first line patients you may have. But then what about how many patients you will have it in second line? How many patient of the first line patient has BRAF mutation, right? And then what is, I mean, there are academic reporting, for example, from like 100 patients here saying that the incidence of BRAF is whatever 1 to 2%, but then there may be another institute reporting something very different. So, I mean, while for physicians, like 1 to 2% versus 5% is not that big of a deal. For industry, that's how we estimate how many patients will take our drug, right? So we have a group of folks just to analyze this data so that we know exactly what number to plug in when we estimate the market size. And then obviously they also deal with real world evidence, right? So sometimes we collaborate with the physician to collect real world data about the use of specific drugs, sometimes our drug, sometimes our competitor's drug, so that we have a full picture of the financial I mean, not really the financial, they don't really analyze the financial, but they analyze the critical number to be inputted to create a financial model. Yeah, and then they also work with, for the US, probably not that much, but for European and the rest of the world, they also work with the agencies to determine drug pricing. So they are very important function behind the scene as well.
Yeah, no, thank you both for the very insightful response. I think I'm glad that we're spending some time here on this slide, because a good number of our audience, like John alluded to, actually interested in basically getting their step in, getting a job, a position in one of these roles that we just discussed. It. I don't know if we could get a bit more in terms of for graduate students. I'm just reading up their question. Graduate students and master degree, PhD student. What's their for that, with that qualification, say in biology or whatnot, what's their typical role, in the clinical trial, either academia or industry? And I don't know, you guys know their overall compensation, like what is it like, and what kind of requirement they need to essentially get a job here.
Ronan, do you want to comment on like a research coordinator? What are the typical background of the coordinators?
Yeah, do you know their?
I have some PhD graduates, from biochemical background, going to be a research coordinator. I always feel like they are overqualified, but they told me that they couldn't find other jobs because of the poor job markets nowadays. So anyway, I actually don't know about their compensation, to be honest. I know that the private hospital like Swedish pays people much better for research coordinator, and this is what I know because there are lots of turnover. In my previous workplace, that was a public university, and the reason that actually last year 4 research coordinators quit at the same time, and most people think that it was a toxic work environment, and also the salary is not good in public university. And same thing for my fellowship as well. It was a public university, and the research coordinator turnover was more. Now I'm a private hospital. We don't have a lot of turnover, so I really don't have a number. But I would say that private hospital tends to pay better than public university. Now the problem is that some of the private hospital doesn't sponsor visa, so I don't know. Like for example, Swedish doesn't sponsor visa, so I haven't seen a lot of like international medical graduate or PhD graduate coming here. Usually they are like U.S. born. So maybe that's one consideration that we should have. But yeah, I really don't have a number, but if somebody's interested, I can ask around.
Yeah, I wonder if this for academia, is it limited by the funding requirement? Like usually some of the funding body will outline how much you could pay for certain position. It could be like that.
I'm really not sure. Okay, why the public university pays poorly? Um, I think it's just because it's a state university funding, so it might be more stringent.
Mm-hmm.
I actually may know why.
Yeah,
right?
can you tell me more?
Because I don't know you, Doc, but when I was at USC, the clinical trial unit is operated like you can think of operate like an independent department. You can put it this way, or you can think about even sometimes I feel like it operates like an independent company. So they basically need to balance their expense and their revenue. Where do their revenue come from, right? So industry sponsored trial and also academic trial, right? And then Swedish, if you have a portfolio that 80% of your trial are industry sponsored, your financial status will be a whole lot better compared to if you are in the academic where you try to prioritize the IIT from within, you try to prioritize your contribution to the cooperative group, then your funding situation will be much, much worse, right? So I'm just telling you some number I've heard. I don't know if it's inflation adjusted at this point, but I've heard that some industry, a cooperative group trial just pay you like $4,000 or $5,000 per each enrollment.
Yeah.
So I mean,
so
that's to sponsor trial probably pay you $5,000 on the first visit.
Right. I thought about that as well, but this is the thing. When I was in UW, when I want to run some IT, they don't allow me as well. I have to use my startup money to pay for that. So even for public university, I think it's getting more stringent in running IT, but they still pay people poorly. And then you talk about the cooperative group trials, right? In Swedish, we open a lot of cooperative group trials, and yes, those trials cost deficit money, but we have a separate U grant or P grant, I forget, for the whole Swedish to run the co-op trials. So that makes us financially even. Yeah, so I really don't have a good answer, and I asked a lot of people. I asked people before why like a public university pay people poorly, and nobody really know. And this is not just for not for all academic. Like I know that the research coordinator at MD Anderson get paid very well, but MD Anderson is a very academic place, and also the doctors there get paid really well because I interviewed there, right? So that's a part I don't know why public university always pays people poorly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that could be above our payroll. They could figure out how. But well, for John, I know you share quite a lot of the detail of these functions in the industry. I don't know if you wanted to just kind of give us a few highlights, like how people with master degree or PhD, how they typically find a role in industry. And I think some audience wonder, like, do they need to have certain clinical experience? Because I know some of them just got some, most of the experience in basic like science or bench work, not too much of a, direct like clinical exposure. Do you think that would make a difference? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know most. Okay. So let's see. So for research, right? All the research. I mean, not all actually. I mean, in big pharma, we don't have a lot of entry level position. Actually, I noticed actually that because when I was in some kind of gathering with some Seattle biotech folks, I do know that there are some like master degree who's doing like technician type of job in the research department. But I also did not know that Pfizer has this type of position at all. So Pfizer research, even like for newcomers, there are newcomers from like, they are like senior postdoc before they join Pfizer research organization. So I think that if you are a good researcher and then you're thinking about getting a tenure somewhere, but you decided to change your mind in the last minute, you probably will be moved. There may be a role here, right? So I mean, you need to be good at research before you can join industry for research department. PKPD, I think that there is also some kind of master degree in PKPD, but I mean, all the PKPD folks I know of has a PhD degree, so I think that they are probably transition from other research function into PKPD department at some point. So that I'm not sure. You probably can do PKPD as a master, but I just did not see it at Pfizer. Maybe in smaller company, I don't know. For development, most of the development folks has medical related degrees. So yeah, clinical development obviously is either us or clinical scientists. So for medical director, we are all physicians. So for clinical scientists, they are usually either like 50% of them are pharmacists in background. And a lot of pharmacists actually can do a clinical development fellowship and then become a clinical scientist. And that's about half. The other half are PhDs that transition from other functions. So they most commonly they are PhDs who end up doing a more managerial role, and then those PhD become like like some kind of trial manager. So after the PhD become a trial manager, they get some experience working with trials, and then they can later transition and become a scientist, like a clinical scientist. Safety is also pretty much MDs and pharmacists. Regulatory, most of the regulatory folks that I know are some kind of biology background, either master or PhD. I still don't understand why we need a PhD for regulatory, but I mean, just
just level the game. Yeah.
Yeah, just because everybody has a PhD now, so
yeah.
I don't understand. Now, regulatory folks, they just are like very good writers. So they are basically just reading and writing all day long. Anyway, operations in our function. So operation actually in big pharma, operation is actually split into two parts. One like project manager aspect of things. So they control like vendor negotiation, contract, like budget of the study, timeline of the study. So that is actually, you may think it as tedious, but they are like in the clinical department, in the clinical development department, I mean, these folks are as big. So they are sitting right next to our VP. Because right, so timeline, budget control is as important as medical decision. Yeah. And then there's another half, or maybe more than half. I mean, maybe 80% of our clinical personnel are clinical trial associate, clinical research associates. So there are those folks that go into the field, going to the hospital, and then check the data with the research coordinator, research nurse. So those are the majority of the job in that. And what I noticed is that most of the CRA transition from research coordinator. Yeah, so they sort of jumped from the academic side of this job to the industry side of the job. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. I mean, obviously there's this like I mean, drug supply is somewhat a part of it. So besides the CRA, there's another group called LDM. So it's like a laboratory data manager. So they're not really a data manager per se, but they manage like lab kit and then centrally tested labs, those type of things. But that's a minority of them. So those, I suppose, most of the cleanup folks come from some kind of nursing background. Yeah. And then the biometrics, the statistics and programming. So this is actually one of the niche area that the audience may have a good opportunity in, because most of the stats folks that I know are Chinese. I would say like 90%.
Yeah.
Programming is a mix of Chinese and Indian. There's like zero American.
It's just like pretty stereotype, but yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, most of them has some of them does not even need a PhD degree. They just need a master degree in the associated field. I don't know how they get in, but yeah, I mean, they're doing very well. Data management, there's a data manager, and then there's a lot of, I mean, there's multiple data manager, and then I think some of them come from clinical operation. Yeah, I don't think they need any specific training to be a data manager. Yeah, but obviously they need to demonstrate that they are very good in terms of managing data, and then they will come in as a data manager for the study. And then if they, besides data manager, they are also good at like some kind of strategic thing, then they can become some kind of data management lead for the program or something. But yeah, I think that everybody may apply if you see a data manager role, because I don't think there's a specific type of degree that is tied to that. Drug supply, I feel drug supply is very similar to cleanups. I think most of them has some CRA background. Yeah, and actually, yeah, I'm gonna skip the commercial and med affair. I suppose if you want to do sales, you can, any degree can do commercial. Medical affair, you need to have some kind of medical degree, but you also need to be like those kind of interactive personality. But you can always explore that. But HEOR is also something that I would say a lot of audience may have opportunities in. So most of the HEOR person come with some kind of biostatistical or public health type of degree. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you both. I think that's very helpful for our audience. And one area we haven't covered, CRO. You guys can also check it out. Something like IQVIA, Fortria. They also got plenty of positions that you may find interesting. Although for some reason, I guess we all interact with CRO at some point, but for some reason they're hardworking folks, but they are not as their experience or the position with CRO is not as prestigious as say, maybe working for say Ronan at the academia center or working for a bigger pharma. I guess that's like a general impression for working experience with CRO. But that's just my take. I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on your experience with people from CRO and how's their qualification.
You want to go first, John? Because I think you guys rely on CRO more than I do. Yeah.
For a smaller biotech,
Pfizer does not. I mean, okay. So when we are a small biotech, when I work at Seagen, we use a lot of CRO. So there are two type of model working with CRO. The first model is we just borrow. I mean, we just basically do like what do we call that? We get contract workers from CRO. So we can actually get different type of contract worker. We can do like so for example, like what a contract worker I usually work with. So we have contract scientists who help us do data cleaning. We have contract CRAs and sometimes the contract person can actually do PM. Yeah, right. Currently, our trial called a clinical project manager. So technically, is the manager of the study is a contract worker. So we can basically hire people through CRO to fill our position. And basically, they are like contracting year by year. So whenever this this work is done, we can just we don't need to lay them off. They just automatically go off. Yeah, and then there's a different model. It's more like for small companies, we can actually do like a whole contracting. So for example, like I don't know, Tian, maybe it's your model, but it is possible that, for example, I want to develop a phase 2 study, and I write the protocol in-house, and then the entire operation from CRA, from trial management, from data management, the drug supply, even the entire thing is outsourced to CRO. So basically, I will be, I mean, if I'm the medical director for a study like this, I'll basically interact with, maybe sometimes they can even outsource a medical director, right? So I can be leading, say, I can write 3 protocols and then just outsource 3 protocol to CROs, and then CRO can operate these 3 studies, and then they will ask me questions if they have, but they are pretty much just operate based on their own SOP, and then we'll meet maybe every week to make sure that everything is according to my expectation. So that's another model. So essentially, CRO has the entire, it should have all the function in the development. Yeah, if you just need more service, you pay more, you get more.
Yeah, we sort of outsource some of the function that you alluded to, and you're right. No, they do have all these functions available as well. So if you guys really interested in opportunities, say within industry, that's something you guys can certainly explore. I think we spent enough time on this different function and job opportunity. Why don't we move on to, so just another slide for trial 101, but this is from protocol development, say CDP, to execution, and then data management, and then eventually data analysis, reporting. Seems straightforward, but I would like Ronan to just give us an overview of how is it like, from the beginning to the finish line.
So when you're saying like planning, does that mean like planning, like writing the clinical trials, or more like
I mean, before you start to write a protocol, what did you do? That's don't talk about industry sponsor, right? So if you want to do IIT or you want to sort of start a cooperative group, what is the first step?
Okay, so I can talk a little bit about, like, sounds like this is a more for investigator in the initial trials, and then John, later on you can talk about how the planning in industry does. Like, I think your process is definitely much more efficient than academics.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure, because you guys, whoever is a supervisor decide to do this trials, you guys can get it going, right? It's gonna be very efficient. That's my thought, but maybe I'm biased. Anyway, so academic to initiate trial is very time-consuming process. Okay, so it's a lot of talk, right? To when you have an idea. Okay, so first. So when you have that, there are several channels that you can investigate initiate trials. As a physician, right? If you want to write a trial, you need to first think about who is your founder, right? Well, you can look for pharmaceutical companies as a founder. So like Pfizer, they publish, their RFP, request for proposal, regularly. Like I just got a proposal from Pfizer yesterday saying they are looking for somebody for sickle cell anemia. I don't do research for that, but if you're interested in sickle cell anemia, you can write a proposal for them. And you basically, you need to find somebody to do statistics in your institution first, and also you need to make the budget in that proposal. And after that, you send it to Pfizer. And usually before I send that proposal, I talk to the MSL and medical directors to see if this is a viable proposal, go or no go, right? That's an initial signal. So, and then after I submit it, I basically just wait for their response, right? They will discuss internally, and maybe John can tell me about how you guys decide on IIT. But basically, if you are looking for pharmaceutical company for sponsor, it's a competitive process, right? They don't sponsor a lot of trials, and sometimes they give you the drugs, they give you money. It's actually for relationship building. You have to be like a key opinion leaders. They have something they need from you. Maybe you are a smart person who is controlling who is writing a guideline for the disease, and they want your help, so they give you the drug. They found the project for you. Okay, so you're a key opinion leaders. So it's tough to get funding from pharmaceutical company. You have to have the status. You have to have they have to have interest. Okay. And sometimes if it's difficult, you can also request that if you can find money from a foundation grant, third-party grants like V Foundation, and then they pay the money. So Pfizer just need to give you free drug. And I think Pfizer will be more willing to do that. Free drug is easier as long as you don't sabotage their product. Basically do a study and then prove that their drug is too dangerous, and then the FDA ban the drugs. Okay, as long as don't do that. And then if you can find the money, then usually the pharmaceutical company will be happy to give you some drugs. Okay. So that will be easier, but either way, it's tough, right? You need to find money. Money is the most important, right? So either you're finding from a company or finding from a private foundation. All right. Now, then, when you are a junior faculty, and I still consider myself a junior faculty. Okay. Sometimes it's hard to get any proposal approved from pharmaceutical company. I know that there are some audience from Taiwan, and in Taiwan there's like a group of a physician called TCOC, right? Similarly, in the U.S. there's SWOG, there's Alliance, there's ECOG acronym. Basically, it is a group of the physicians authorized by the federal government to use taxpayers' money to conduct trials. Okay, so I'm a member of the SWOG. Basically, in a SWOG, if you have idea, you just propose in a monthly meeting. It's usually the subcommittee meeting. So let's say actually last year I proposed it, and last month I also proposed it. When I propose the data, a lot of people give criticism, blah, 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 and you kind of just have a lot of meetings, and then later on you present it in a fall meeting. That fall meeting basically happens twice a year. Okay. And if that's a green light, you then present it in task force. What's task force? So I just told you that, when we are talking about this physician meeting, right, physician groups, there are 5 physician groups in the U.S. Okay, Alliance, ECOG acronym, NRG, SWOG, and children. There's a children group. So okay, so everybody would like to propose something, but what if everybody has overlapping idea? So basically, there's a task force specific for this disease trying to balance between these groups and try to give you some opinion about whether this is a good project. Once you pass through a task force, now you go to the steering committee. Okay, that's an NCI level. Steering committee, basically, that is a final decision. They will not just look at whether this is a good study, whether there's a niche, but they will also look at whether it's a good idea to spend taxpayers' money, because they need to answer the leadership and also Congress, right? Let's say if this is a important idea, but it costs $10 billion, they will shut it down, right? So they will look at more from like a budget standpoint. So again, if you're looking to use taxpayers' money to conduct trials, you have to go through subcommittee meeting, full meeting, task force, and then steering committee, and so forth. So there are a lot of talk. Usually on average, it takes 2 to 3 years before a concept got approved. And every trial takes another 3 to 5 years. So you're looking at almost like 8 to 10 years from the moment that you think about an idea to you finish a study. Okay, so that's a very, very inefficient. I don't think Pfizer will like a 10 years process per trial. Okay, if yes, then maybe we should just take out the money from the stocks. No, anyway, so that's another thing. And by the way, so basically, I talked to you about the different mechanisms. Right? You need to find out money first. Okay, when you think about idea, the next step is money. Where do you want to get money? Okay, now. Whether you go to pharmaceutical company, whether you go to private foundation, or you go to NIH, which is the taxpayers' money, okay, you need to think about why they want to give you the drug and millions of dollars, sometimes to tens of millions to run a trial. You are a junior faculty, nobody trusts you. So it's very, very important for you to find a senior faculty who is willing to support you. And there's some luck in there as well. So I always tell people that you need, whenever you take your jobs, you need to think about who is your mentor and be prepared to leave that job if after 2 to 3 years you find that your mentor does not support you at all. So yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. So that's a planning part. Well, I take so much time talking about planning because that's all I do. Operation is actually very straightforward, right? I mean, I got invited by John to write run a trials, and then basically, if let's say if it's the taxpayers trials, right, and NCI trial, this is the same, right? If I'm interested in this trials, if I'm interested in John's trial, either way, I present to a institutional steering committee. Basically, steering committee is that you have all the oncologists there looking at the trial to see that if this trial is worth doing it and if it's budget appealing. Sometimes it's interesting, but the budget, you pay people like what, 7,000 per patient, we shut it down, okay, because that will cause deficit. And then once the steering committee is approved, it's easy, okay? I basically just sit back and then the research coordinator, research manager, they just look at the protocol, make sure everything's set up. They will figure out the drugs, they'll figure out data management. What I need to do is I see the patient, consent the patient, and if the patient has adverse event, I just record adverse event and put a grading and attribution in there. And I just need to make sure my team answer the pharmaceutical query very timely, okay? And that's it. So operation from the from the physician side is very straightforward. Okay, it's most of the jobs are done by research coordinator and research manager and data scientists. Read out. This more actually from the pharmaceutical side because I don't do a lot of read out, right? Obviously they report it. If you want to talk about who is on the authorship, that's usually is those people who design a trial. Okay, so before the pharmaceutical company conduct a trial, they usually invite several key opinion leaders, KOL, to sit on a steering committee or advisory board to give opinion. And then those people are usually the one who is on the authorships, on the first authorship. And if you enroll patient well, you also get to be a co-author, but you don't get to be a first or senior author even if you enroll enough patient, okay? Because obviously the brain is more important, the steering committee is more important. And finally, reporting. Well, that's more for the John side, okay? I don't
have you ever like participate in like a readout of a cooperative group trial and you write a manuscript together? Have you ever done that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I have not because I'm still a junior faculty, but I can tell you that my colleague did. My colleague was a second author for SWOG 1815 trial, which is a landmark negative trial. So he was not involved in planning of that trial. The first author and senior author wrote most of the protocol, but because it was a negative trial, so nobody wanted to spend so much time writing it. So my colleagues, he's a assistant, and then this year become associate. So like almost at the end of assistant, so end of junior faculty. So he's in that committee. He basically knows the first author. The first author did not have time to write a medical trial. So the second author, he became a second author, writing a whole manuscript, and that got published in AEGM. That's a SWOG 1815. So yes, so in the academic world, it's very small. It's all about knowing people. I always tell people that if you're interested in writing trials in a cooperative group, in a in this kind of National Cancer Institute committee, just kind of do your best to participate in all the meeting, want to contribute, and doesn't want to think about whether you're first author or last author. Just contribute. At one point, you'll get invited to speak in a national conference. At one point, you'll get invited to be one of the co-authors writing a manuscript, or like one of the oral presenter in like a smaller conferences. And eventually, you will work your way up and become a first and second author. So like first and a senior author. So basically that's like climbing a ladder, to be honest. Yeah.
Wow. Sounds like you've been through a lot.
So actually, by the way, I did not get invited to write manuscript, but I did get invited to be the first author writing the abstract for ASCO GI. So everybody know the Checkmate 577. That's basically is the study that got adjuvant nivolumab approved, for esophageal cancer. Okay, so my mentor got invited to be the first author for real world data. So that when we have the trial that approved the drugs, we don't know whether it's still efficacious in real life. So companies sometimes do the real world study. So my mentor got invited to be the first author, design a study, do a real world data, and that study was too small anyway. So my mentor is like, that's fine, Ronan, you can be on the first author. So he basically gave me that. So I got invited to basically steer that real world analysis, and I just submitted that first author abstract for Checkmate 577, which most likely will be selected to present in the ASCO GI. So that's one example. But as you know, I'm just a young VS. I'm a third-year VS, so I'm still pretty junior. So it's a long way to go. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. I think, John, you want to also waiting from the industrial standpoint, how is it like from the start line to the finish? And I certainly echo that, what Ronan pointed out. Even for people in industry, like we're not just competing against other corporate product, but also within the company, you also sort of compete against your colleague to gain more resources and more interest from the leadership, right? But take it away, John.
All right, yeah, that's an interesting aspect. I mean, to be honest, I have not actually competing with other trials within the institution. I mean, yeah, but I've heard what can happen. Okay, so let's think about the planning aspect of a study in the industry. So yeah, if it's first in human phase 1, it's probably more straightforward. Not that much of them. Somebody will sit in a committee and decide whether we move this molecule to do a trial or not. It's not that expensive, so it's fine. But we're talking about if we're talking about the strategy of a development of a trial involving the initiation of phase 3 studies, then there's a lot of planning in there. So for example, like before we actually think about a study, somebody will propose. I mean, not really like somebody will propose, but it will be usually very obvious. So before we go into the phase 3 study, we will look at phase 1 or sometimes phase 2 data, right? So phase 1, phase 2 data will suggest that, okay, so this drug is active in, for example, lung cancer, right? And then the clinical development will come in, and then they will talk to commercial folks to get some idea of like what is the big chunk of indication. Usually, even before we talk to the commercial folk, we sort of already know, right? What is the indication that has more patient population? We call it TPP, target patient population. So we know the size of the TPP. And then just, okay, if we have data to support developing this drug in this indication, and then we come back and we talk to the HEOR folks, we talk to the commercial folks, and then the competitive intelligence. So they will sort of build out a timeline. So if we are planning to do a lung cancer trial in this population, so it will take this long to do this study. And by the time we have a readout, we will have FDA approval by X and XYZ year. And then at that time, the predicted landscape is such and such, so that we will expect that we have whatever 40% of the market share, 40% market share times TPP size in the US, and like also analyzing the entire world. Then we know how much this trial may generate, how much revenue a trial can generate, how much revenue a approved indication can generate for our asset, right? And then we also factor in like, usually at this point, I mean, the cost of the trial is important, but actually it is, although that it may be like a like $100 million or $200 million trial, I mean, usually we are looking at a revenue much higher than that. So we actually are more important. We're interested in looking for an indication that can generate more than $1 billion a year. So that's Pfizer's standard. Pfizer does not play those rare indications because we are only looking at like an indication that can help us generate a peak sales more than $1 billion, right? So with the peak sales more than $1 billion, like 100, 200 million pivotal trial, yeah, fine, I don't care. 200, 300, even if we want to pay 300 just to speed things up, it's worth it, right? So that's why like big company can actually move study very, very fast. So for example, like we in-license a drug from a Chinese company in July, and then we are activating 2 phase 3 trial in December. So that's how fast. I mean, we still have all those functions, all those information coming in, but we can execute it in a very, very fast pace. So that's planning. Planning obviously also involve like writing clinical trial protocols. We also involve like doing like like deciding the steering committee, getting outside opinion, going through those health authority interaction, all those. And operation part, I think, is pretty much reflecting what Ronan has been saying. However, I will say that actually for most of the medical directors, operation is actually like more than 50% of our job. So yeah, so planning, we usually do it like it's more like, yeah, during my 4 years in industry, the planning phase is like for the past 3 months. Right, so we do very intensive planning in a very short period of time, and then the rest of the time is like operation, and then we read out. There's a lot of data cleaning, all those things, and then writing the manuscript. And for us, manuscript is actually not the key. So very different from academia, where publication is the most important thing. For us, it is actually the filing, or we call it like SBOA, yeah, biologic application, right? So it's like approval, I mean, application for our drug to have an indication in the US or in the rest of the world. So that filing is actually the most critical part for a late phase study, where we can, yeah. So I mean, after a successful trial, you'll be busy for at least 1 year working with filing for different agencies. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pause here and see if if Tim, we want to dig in any specific thing, or if we have any questions that we want to address.
Yeah, I think it's but again, I appreciate both of you about insight from different perspective. I think we kind of covered this where, from the industrial and practicing physician standpoint, how is it like? I think we could take a break. We're at 1 hour, a little over 1 hour mark. We could take a break and see if the live audience got any questions, in Mandarin or English, wanted to shoot it out in the chat box, or just wanted to open your mic and ask our panelists like anything that we just discussed, or anything on top of your head.
I'm going to grab some water. I'll be back.
Yeah, go ahead. I have Tina from Boston. Let's see. Since large clinical trials are often resource intensive and costly, what specific value do academia initiate trials bring, whether in terms of innovation, addressing unmet needs, or okay, I think this is a very good question. I think Ronan, you probably know how to answer that. Like, even though a lot of the landmark trials like it's like industrial sponsor, there's still role for IIT and certainly like academic trialists to add more value, to real world evidence or whatnot. But yeah, what's your take?
Well, I would say most academic initiated trials probably are, those trials that pharmaceutical company don't want to do or not a priority, right? So when you're writing IIT, you have to think about what are those areas. Number one is a rare population, like small bowel cancer, right? And purine cancer, right? Very, very rare. That's number one. Goblet cell cancer, wow, that's too rare. Okay, number one. Number two is, those studies that are important for in a clinical day-to-day practice, but it doesn't help the pharmaceutical companies to get more money. Okay, so I'm just thinking about some.
Usually the neoadjuvant trial.
Yeah, I mean neoadjuvant. Well, I mean neoadjuvant trial can benefit a pharmaceutical company, right? I mean, it's
So
an
usually
increase in market
pharmaceutical
share.
company like to do adjuvant because adjuvant is usually 1 year long, and then neoadjuvant is 6 cycle long. So usually we prove that it
Oh,
works
yeah,
in
yeah.
the adjuvant setting, and then we stop there. We don't want to do neoadjuvant because by doing that you are actually cutting small the
Yeah,
set.
I think that's a good point. I was actually thinking about sequence of the treatment. A versus A first versus B, or B first versus A.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So look at the DreamSeq study, right? It's something like that. Like whether which one should be the first line, which one should be the second line. That one pharmaceutical company has relatively less interest to do, particularly if that cancer is not the most aggressive. So people tend to get a second line. Okay. So yeah, that would be an example. Or drug that has already passed patent, right? For example, a SWOG 1815, right? They basically just add Abraxane to the first line chemotherapy for biliary tract cancer. That chemotherapy is cheap anyway. So, but basically they are trying to do 3 drugs versus 2 drugs. So that would be another example that no pharmaceutical company will want to do. And right now, yeah. So basically, those are example. Okay, so there are some trial that the pharmaceutical company will never do, and that will be the example for you. Okay, I can think about a lot. Okay, so basically, in esophageal cancer, right? There is like a first line indication for Claudin 18.2 agent, and there's a first line indication for PD-1 inhibitors. All right, what if the tumor is PD-1 positive and then Claudin 18.2 positive? What would you do? Which one do you choose first, or do you add both of them, right? That is relatively lower market share if the pharmaceutical company want to do that. So it's like a relatively less interest. You just have to find that niche, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Roland brought a good point. Is industrial sponsored trial tend to be the nature will be like a bit biased to profit driven, like John early on alluded to. Like they only look at trial that generate enough revenue to support all the functions and all the expensive people they hire. So that certainly there's certainly room for academic trialists to contribute to the more evidence and overall clinical development.
And then we actually welcome those, right? A lot of the IIT, the most important IIT that we want to sponsor are the IIT that is going to help off-label use for our drug, right? So if we bring this drug to the market, and then so for example, like if you are selling a drug for for example like a urothelial cancer, right? and then you're doing IIT testing it on like penile cancer, right? I mean, if it works, great. If it doesn't, fine, right? Right. So these are the typical type of IIT that will be like interested in. Yeah.
And also, there's another example like multidisciplinary management. Okay, chemoradiation versus chemotherapy alone. Okay, things like that. That pharmaceutical company usually doesn't like to do because it's very cumbersome. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we for us, that's another thing that we want to avoid. I mean, it's not really about cumbersome or cost. It's about we don't typically like to do trials that involve radiation, right? Because radiation is more like technical depend. Oh yeah, we don't want to involve like radiation, just like we don't want to involve like surgery that much, right? Because that is like operator dependent. Every institute is different. Yeah, it create a lot of noise, and then it create like this type of like uncertainty. We don't like uncertainty.
Exactly. Yeah. So you guys like more about for like metastatic disease because there's more certainty, right? And yeah. So and like for example, organ preservation trial. Okay. Like if you want to see that if you give these drugs and then maybe organ and then we don't do surgery versus somebody got surgery, we want to prove that as a non-inferiority. No drug company want to do that. What's are they going to gain from that, right? That's a patient will gain from that, but not the pharmaceutical company. So organ preservation is an example. So I can think about a lot, to be honest with you. We discuss about this every month in SWOG, and also I actually also sit in a task force, so we have a lot of those kind of a situation, right? Rare disease, rare gene, a drug that's off patent, sequencing trial, multidisciplinary trial, a lot really.
No, thank you. It's helpful. I'm just reading up the next question from Cindy. She's asking Ronan apparently for from an academic perspective, for industrial collaboration, it's challenging on an ethical standpoint to balance the industry partners' expectation, hopes for early safety or efficacy studies. Is there pressure to produce evidence showing the drug candidate safe? Oh, I see. I think is it my understanding is that she's asking it will you be like biased because you're running a industrial sponsored trial, even though you're a clinician and a academic trialist, would be biased because you're getting sponsored by them.
Well, actually not, right? Because we all so I guess I have to like understand what the bias means, right? Like I think
Are we bribing you so that you don't report AE?
Oh, definitely not. I don't get anything from that, right? Okay, let me speak honestly, okay? So pharmaceutical company, right? If I help them get a positive trial, I don't get any money nor fame. If I get a negative trial, I don't get any retribution, or I don't get any punishment. So what do I gain from reporting something that's not honest? I don't gain anything at all. When I run a pharmaceutical company trials, I already got paid by the company, and then the money doesn't go to me. That money goes to the hospital. So what I get from that is usually because the hospital get the money, so I'm able to get protected time. I can do research, right? But that money doesn't flow directly to my personal account. So I already get that protected time. Whether I do make it positive or negative, that wouldn't affect that protected time. That wouldn't affect the company, the money paid to the hospital. And also, as I said before, the authorship is already determined when the trial is conducted. Okay, so yeah, no. Another thing though is I don't know is that if you are running the IIT and if you are the PI doing that IIT, would you be biased to report less adverse event if you are the principal investigator in that trial? That part, I always ask myself not to, but I cannot guarantee everybody does the same thing. I have a feeling that yes, this could skew somebody's opinion because naturally human interaction, they might because of their bias for this drug, they might feel like they want to make this trial looks more impressive than ever. That part I cannot answer. But pharmaceutical companies sponsor trials. There's no gain or loss, if I repair positive or negative results.
Yeah, and then I also want to point out that the pharmaceutical sponsor trial are under microscope from regulator all over. Yeah, we need source document for every country to look at. And then also there are like compliance team making sure that every step of the way we are doing the correct thing. So actually, yeah, I'm not saying that academic trial are less or better, but you can definitely trust the industry sponsored trial that our trial are run at the highest ever standard that you can imagine. We have like a whole team just to check in for the quality. I mean, I don't think that you see this type of like vigilance on anything we do technically.
Yeah.
Typically, the data for the pharmaceutical sponsored trial actually, I think, is better control and more accurate than a IIT. I think that's so everybody agrees with that. Yeah.
I think there's like a pre-submitted question also regarding this like public distrust about industrial sponsored trials. I'm glad that we covered this early on. I think Tina, no, not before Tina. There's let's see, Chen Xun asked, let's say PI wants to initiate IIT comparing different drug efficacy, wants to find industrial sponsor for the trial. However, the company has concern that the trial may yield conflict or competition to other company drug. How can PI still convince the company to sponsor the trial? I see. So
you don't.
Yeah, then you don't get it.
Then you don't get it.
Yeah.
So I can tell you that even in a cooperative group trial, people spend 3 years designing the trials, and then one large company pulled it out like at a time that when the trial is about to start. A lot of people's waste of a lot of people's hours and efforts for the last 3 years. If the company see that this trial is gonna make their market share less, they're going to pull it away. Even if you have the taxpayers' money to back you, they have the drug. They just don't supply the drugs. So you just don't get the drugs if you make them look bad, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's actually the reason why like there are a lot of cancer that has like 2 first-line therapy there, and then you would never see a trial comparing this 2 first-line therapy, right? Because no, they will not compete with each other.
Yeah,
I mean,
even you have billions of dollars.
Even if one company feel that my drug is better than the other will not supply the drugs, so you never see the comparison.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, these are good points. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh no. So I would say that it's you just have to find a way to convince them. Let's say A versus B. If there's no head-to-head comparison, right? Sometimes I will try to find a private foundation to support my work for a real-world analysis of A versus B to serve as a best evidence. You just have to find a philanthropy to do this.
Yeah. So certainly there's certainly some limitation in terms of how our system currently works, and we certainly can do better. That's why taxpayer money is sort of important, although now under this administration, it can be harder to get.
It's 7:25 p.m. by the way.
Sorry, my Siri. You triggered my Siri to report time. Okay, but anyway, there's one thing I want to highlight here. When you are designing a trial for, like IIT, don't think of yourself as a physician. Think of yourself as a pharmaceutical company businessman. How do you help this company earn more money? That is very important. That I feel like a lot of physicians, they don't know when they're designing clinical trial. So if you're designing clinical trial, you need to make sure that you are helping some company making the money that they don't otherwise want to invest. If you have seen that when we're doing the like in our SWOT call, in like a national cooperative group call, we sometimes try to tell them that this is not your priority. but we can use the taxpayers' money to help you develop the drug in this area that, it's to be cheaper for you because we're using the taxpayers' money. So you really need to think like a businessman, like how to help the pharmaceutical company get some market share.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we can move on to another question from Tina. She asks you guys whether you're using AI to run your clinical trial, from patient identification or, day-to-day practice. Is it playing a significant role right now? Or I think we plan to cover that later on, but we can certainly answer that.
Yeah. So, I guess, John can talk about using like AI for the drug development. I know that there's some research using AI to figure out the best like next targets for cancer drugs. That part I don't know that much. That's more like bench work. But I can tell you that in terms of the daily clinical practice, we send molecular study, right? And nowadays, I think Tempus or Caris, all those like next generation sequencing company, they have the AI to basically use the molecular profiles to direct us to see available trials and things like that, and what will be the best match for this patient. Outside of that, I actually not sure about whether they use AI to enhance recruitment. But maybe John can talk more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think. Okay, I'm using AI every day, but I'm using AI like to help me write every day, right? So I mean, like 50% of my day is trying to write email or or write some like ICD update, some kind of language here, language there, manuscript, you name it. So I'm using AI every day, but I'm not actually using AI in clinical trial per se. So I know that Pfizer has a lot of initiatives about how to use AI to improve the R&D efficiency. So I mean, most of them are. So the first wave is obviously for writing assistance. So we are trying to, for example, like all the Pfizer manuscript and abstract these days are actually first draft written by AI since this year. So AI is like replacing. So do you notice that I did not have writer as one of the function when I talk about R&D? Because I will suggest you against any of you to join the writer organization, because we used to be a very, very big organization, and then now it's like 50% layoff at this point. So I mean, yeah, now one writer can handle multiple tasks with the help of AI. But that's one thing. I think that there's another initiative of trying to use AI to find some harder to enroll trial. I mean, not that, to help boost the enrollment of the trial by identifying the niche institutions, because we do have pretty much all the. I mean, there's a database that know like what is the enrollment status on what drug, on what on what indication. So we have all that, but those data are very complicated, and then so far, I don't think that we are making a full use of it. And there is an initiative to try to help us do that. So now we have some kind of score, right? So when you have an indication, there's the system automatically generate a score telling you that this institute may enroll better in this indication. But I don't know how good they are. I seriously don't know. So we have some kind of score rather than based on my estimation, but I don't know how good they are. Obviously, we are pushing this, so maybe.
Yeah. I think the next question, I don't know if you guys familiar with the story behind this, but I think they want to know how Eli Lilly basically win the GLP war over the Novo Nordisk. They're asking why they dare to compare, like do direct comparison with Ozempic.
Yeah, to be honest, when I enter the oncology world, there's no like Ozempic, right? So I really don't know too much about obesity drugs. I'm trying to see if this is because the semaglutide was almost like off patent. If it's off patent, then the company doesn't care that much, or you can actually get it easily. But maybe somebody knows more about this, it has to really dig back to that.
I mean, I don't know that well. I mean, but my feeling is because we are comparing actually two generations of drugs, right? Semaglutide is just GLP-1, and then I think tirzepatide, that's Mounjaro. Mounjaro has like
Yeah.
dual action, and then I think semaglutide. I mean, Novo Nordisk also had their dual action drug that's called Cagri Semi. So it's a Cagri plus a Semi, and then that drug did not pan out that well. So I feel that this is actually a, I mean, Novo Nordisk is first before Lilly, but Lilly become the best in class. I think this is not uncommon, right? So Nivo came before Pembro, and then Pembro essentially become the best in class later. So I mean, yeah, to me, it happened all the time. I mean, semaglutide is not going to disappear. There's still a good share of people who will use that. But I think Mounjaro is just better in terms of like weight reduction. So
I
more
mean,
people use that.
another possibility is that maybe the control arm, basically you just bill to insurance as a standard of care, so you don't need drug supply from Novo Nordisk. You got what I'm saying, right? Yeah, so then you don't need Novo Nordisk to agree to supply drug. If that's the case, you just bill the insurance. That's another possibility. Again, I only know cancer drugs, okay, but I can tell you that some of the trials are like that. The control arm is standard of care. You actually don't need the consent. You just bill to the insurance, so you can run that trial. Yeah.
Okay. I get it. Okay. So the question is, why can they compare two novel drugs? I actually find this fascinating because you never see like in oncology, you never see in oncology that they will compare like have randomized patient to receive Pembro versus
Yeah.
Nivo.
But also because all of them are in patent, right? And I think semaglutide is a drug that I learned about this in medical school. So, and I never heard about tirzepatide like Ozempic until recently. Again, I'm kind of getting old now. So basically, I would say that maybe because semaglutide is kind of old drugs, and I really not know. Again, this is coming from somebody who is just doing cancer drugs. Yeah. So there should be some
Patients are
story
not
behind
fat
that.
enough to use these, right? Especially your
Yeah.
patients are not obese at all.
Yeah, and again, I really couldn't remember any recent like oncology trials that's I really had to have comparison between the same indication. It's really I haven't seen before, and yeah. So
Oh yeah, you have the DXD versus TDM1.
Yeah, unless you're a next generation drug, like for instance, like third generation, like osimertinib.
I was actually super surprised that they're able to get TDM1.
So I
But
mean,
I also feel like it's maybe like more like standard of care that
No, but TDXD versus TDM1, I think that's because, and again, this is really something like more like insider information, right? I have a feel when I saw that trial, I have a feeling that maybe some people think that TDM1 could be better than TDXD because before that trial, TDM1 was before TDXD, remember? So there was some uncertainty there. So maybe the company was maybe adventurous enough. I don't know. Yeah.
Stupid enough to show one of the largest
This is
peer ever
exactly.
seen.
It's really uncommon. It's really uncommon. And only the insider know that information. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of strategic like thinking behind the scene and beyond medicine. There's like BD also involved, and the higher up leadership. They collect all the input and they made a bold decision basically in this case. I think Ozempic it was more like a monopoly in this field, and Eli Lilly really need to differentiate themselves. And it turned out to be a very high rewarding bet, and they apparently the rest of the history you see the stock the stock price kind of plummeted for the Novo Nordisk after the announcement of this trial. But thank you for bringing up. I think the endocrinologists may be able to tell us a bit more of the what's behind the scene, because they may heard some rumor like when the drug about to be developed. Yeah. But yeah, interesting question. Are you talking about a study? Comparing studies, say the study. Okay, yeah, the Ronan's brought up. Yeah, I think there's a one in JM like sponsored by Eli Lilly. That's what they posted here. Any other question from the live audience, or I can also let's see, and we do have a little time here. Follow up another question. So Tina again, could you share what your funding proportion for IIT as a young attending looks like? Oh, I see. So it's back to Ronan's like as a junior faculty, usually like you get most of your funding from what source, and whether you observe shift in the funding structure as investigators advance through their careers, like when you become more senior, do you get more, say, more pharma support or more, NIH, NCI support, etc., etc.
Yeah, so as you know right now, right, I'm switching to, I think Tina, I know you. So basically, I switched my job to more like a private hospital. So, but I can tell you about my previous, experience in University of Washington. Okay, I did get a grant, but that's about probably 10% of the efforts. Okay, and that was actually the grants passed down from one of my mentors. So I'm grateful to her that she gave me that to cover my time. So about 10% of grant at that time. And then it was about 55% of the clinical time. Well, 50 to 55. Okay, depends on how much you count the inpatient. And the rest is really pharmaceutical company. Okay, so it's usually like 30%, at least 30% pharmaceutical companies, and then about 10% foundation grants or NIH. From the beginning, it depends on what you want to do, right? If you're a clinical scholar, because I'm a clinical scholar, I don't do bench, right? For clinical scholar, I think it tends to get most of the funding protection time from pharmaceutical support, and then you'll start writing grants. And even if you write grant, it's rare for junior faculty to get like R1 grants. It usually is like a K grants, V Foundation grants, or ASCO, Career Development Award. Okay, so that's basically it. And when you get more senior, you accumulate enough experience, recognition, and then you start to be more focused on something that you are successful at, and then you eventually will have more grants and foundation. And basically NIH and foundation, they're kind of similar thing. One is from government, the other is from private. And then we'll have less percentage of the pharmaceutical companies. Okay. And that's what I see as well for most people who reach associate professor. This is when they get more grants. Yeah. But from the beginning, it's important for your mentor to give you pharmaceutical company trial, because this is really like a catch-22, right? When you just started, the pharmaceutical company didn't know you, so they will give you a very minimal study, and then it's difficult for you to get a grant as a clinical scholar. So at that time, it will be very tough for you to support your research time. Right. So it's important for you to find a mentor, really take care of you, give you pharmaceutical company trials so that you can support your production time. So yeah.
I don't even know that pharmaceutical trials give you protected time. Is that just UW thing, or is that across the board?
It's everywhere. It's a lot of places. Pharmaceutical company, let's say it gives you I'm just making up number, okay, maybe like $50,000. So as a PI, like supervising time, and you just divided that to your salary, and that's basically the percentage of your time covered. They will count your money. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So when you just start out, like you're the junior person, it's difficult for you to get a grant, right? No, most people don't get lots of grants as a clinical scholar, so you need those pharmaceutical companies' money. Yeah. Well, it's a little bit different if you're a bench person, though. If you're a basic scientist, like translational scientist running lab, obviously you don't do that much of a pharmaceutical grant, you really need to have R01, K99, things like that. So you need to write a lot of like a lot of NIH grant. That's different. And I have never been a translational scientist who has a bench, so it's hard for me to talk about how much percentage that is. But yeah, I can tell you, clinical scholar, you need lots of pharmaceutical trials. So this is what I want to bring out one more point. I don't know whether there's anybody who's a resident or a fellow here. When you choose a faculty job, you need to make sure you are going to a position where you can get lots of trials. Okay, so for example, when I apply for faculty, there's a place that basically will make me to be the only liver cancer specialist, and that's actually a good thing because you will get all the liver cancer trials, okay, to support your your effort. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ronan brought out an interesting perspective from also from career development standpoint, because I always see that people staying in academia, eventually they climb the ladder and develop a special niche, right? Very specific, say pancreatic or liver, or maybe say KRAS mutated non-small cell. Whereas when you go to industry, you climb the industrial ladder, eventually you kind of get more and more of a broader perspective as you go all the way up. Say if John climbed all the way to say VP level, he may not just fixated to therapy area like GU oncology. It could be just oncology or hematology oncology VP for Pfizer. So very different perspective, and he'll be like doing very different decision making, all that. So that's something that you guys could think about when you decided what to do moving forward as your career develop and thrive.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is a great observation. So I was just had some career talk with my manager, and then she mentioned like, oh, we are both GU oncologists, but I mean, she's at a point that she need to start branching out. So she need to actively looking for opportunity to lead development in like other indications in order for her to advance her career. So just like me, when I'm positioning myself in in the industry, so I cannot. I mean, you can definitely have something that you are really good at, but after that, you need to also spread out and do a lot of things. So I need to actively look for opportunity to do early phase study, right? So you learn how to do early phase study, and then you will need to find the opportunity to do filing if you just does not have the opportunity to file, right? And then you need to also go out of your indication. So from GU, you need to go to breast, go to hematology, so that so that you are not biased to only the field that you are familiar with, because development in different indication can be super different. I mean, eventually you may actually spin out of oncology, right? You can go and develop in weight-losing drugs, right? Vaccines. I mean, that's all doable. It's just, yeah, I mean, you position yourself to be like a well-versed industry person, you really need to be broad.
Yeah, I cannot stress that enough. Be open-minded, and I think some of the audience know me. One of the reason I switched to a different hospital is also because I couldn't really get that much of a pharmaceutical support for trials because they're just very crowded. There are too many people to feed. So I switched to a place where I can really do the things I want to do, and I get much more trial, like 5 times the trials I got in a previous place. So really as a junior faculty, sometimes it's hard for you to figure out what the best place is, either industry or either is like from academics or like more like private hospital. You just trust your gut, and really after 2 to 3 years, if you don't find your way, be prepared to jump, as always.
Yeah, just like a trivia fact. I think that the median time for medical director job is about 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
So most of the most of our colleague, not at Pfizer. No, Pfizer is sort of outlier, but most of my colleague at my previous institution, previous company, they switch every 2, 3 years. If you look at their LinkedIn, and sometimes they jump out and jump back. Yeah, quite interesting.
Yeah, and guys, feel free to unmute yourself. You want to ask question directly to panelists, or you want to drop more question in the chat. And in the meantime, I'll just kind of press or anyone feel free to go ahead. I'll just press my panelists a bit more. I know we covered it a bit, but personally, I feel like jumping from one industrial job to another, or say jumping from one clinical job to another would be more straightforward. But when you're switching from, say, industry to academia or academia to industry, I feel like early career wise is sort of okay, but later on, a lot of the skill set is hardly translatable, and you got so much like sunken cost when you're, say, mid-career. Do you feel like that's also what you observe, or your people can kind of just jump ship at any time?
Well, I guess John should go first because he's the one who jumped.
Yeah, you took a leap of faith.
But I left academia very early. I only practiced in USC for a year before I joined industry. So I mean, interesting. I mean, okay. So let's put it this way. So first, I seldom see industry person jump back to academia. I think it's probably because academia sort of what do you call that, is harder to get back once you leave, right? But I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but that's what I think. Or industry side of things is just like the dark side is just so much powerful that we don't really want to be exposed under the sun anymore. But anyway, but in terms of jumping from academia to industry, you actually has different time point that you can do so. So you can do it very early, right? So we industry welcome. I mean, as usually larger institutions, they have the capacity to train young and enthusiastic junior medical directors. So they are usually recruiting these right out of the more prestigious fellowship program. So that's one timing that a lot of us join. I would not say like the biggest, but maybe 30%, a third, or maybe less, a little bit less than a third. And then there's another big timing that's between 5 to 10 years of attending. So then you're the mid-career attending with an associate professor title, and then you're specialized in a particular field, may have been given like opportunity for a couple of podium talk in the major conferences, and then you obviously has cooperated with different industry partners. And then at this point, if the industry is looking for somebody to lead a molecule that is just fitting the need, and then the molecule to be developed in your niche expertise, then you have the opportunity to jump at that time as a more like a senior director level. And then depends on how good you are. I mean, those senior directors tend to be promoted very quickly if possible, because the reason why we are hiring these type of physician as senior, not as executive, is that because we are not sure these physicians can manage big teams, right? We know that we trust their medical judgment, we trust their knowledge, and they're already established themselves, but we don't know if they can manage a team. So if they can manage a team, they'll get promoted to executive and really lead the entire program very quickly. So that's another time point. And then the third time point is on the paper, on the news a lot, but actually there are not that many people that actually get to that level, right? You can see like previous I think was that the DD Oncology is led by a previous Dana-Farber physician scientist. I'm blanking out on his name anymore, but yeah, there's things like that, or the Sloan Kettering chief, a physician in chief became one of the R&D head in AstraZeneca. So those things also happen when you are really like a world-renowned researcher. And then if the company feel that they need somebody to steer the ship for the entire R&D organization, sometimes they will also do that. But not that common. And then there are only some institutions that like to do that. And some institutions, for example, like Pfizer, Merck, we never do that. Yeah, we trust industry folks rather than the academic folks.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your input here. I just wanted to quickly tune into one of our audience, Leon's question. I think we covered a little bit, but we didn't give the actual number. He's wondering, like, do we know, like, for a PhD graduate, how much they're getting paid for, involving clinical trial, or maybe bigger picture, like preclinical or whatever, maybe medical affair or whatnot. How much they're getting when they only have a PhD without postdoc experience, without being a faculty. So my understanding is that they start with some sort of like research associate, regardless of whether they're in academia or industry, is sort of title like that. They get paid, my understanding, that a bit more than postdoc level, whatever NIH regulated postdoc level, get a little bit better than that. But then they have to also climb their own ladder from research associate to maybe senior to scientist and all that. That's my understanding. I know quite a few folks, that they're like PhD.
Yeah, I think at Pfizer, I don't even know what is the better term to say that, but we have a physician track and we have a non-physician track. So physician track sort of with the same level of what do you call that, salary level, or salary level. I think I'm like 19 or whatever. But with like, if there's a PhD holding a salary level 19, I'm going to get paid more because I'm a physician, right? But I mean, from a PhD, you can get higher at a salary level 10, and then you can be higher at a salary level 15, and then that 10 or 15 will sort of we'll have actually different job title in different function, right? So you can be a senior scientist if you are doing a research, right, in a research organization. But you can also be some kind of a senior manager if you are doing if you are say pay level 17 as a senior manager in HEOR. So I mean, I think in general, I would say, like, for sure we will pay you more than like the entry level in the academia, but I don't know exactly how much. I think it really differ. Maybe also differ which year you actually join the industry. I think that in the 2020, it's very easy to join industry, so the pay may be better. But if you try to find a job now, it's harder to find and pay maybe less.
Yeah, and I think you also alluded to that, but just to make it clear, I think, John, you started at director level, but for someone with only PhD without being a faculty or postdoc, usually they need to climb several levels before they reach director, like you alluded to, right? Start the science.
Yeah, and also medical director is sort of very niche, right? So we are a director without a lot of reports. I don't have any direct report at all as a director. But usually, if you are a PhD at the director level, you are leading a group. I mean, in the research organization, if you're a director, you're leading probably at least 5 folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very, very different.
I think, Cindy brought out another question here in the chat box. Ronan can probably weigh in on this. Like, you probably saw a little bit about how the new administration, well, not really new right now, but how it is changing the regulation and also federal funding mechanism affect affect in general academia, like funding source, and affecting your day-to-day practice. And what's your prediction moving forward for the next 3.5 years? A little more than,
So before I left Fred Hutch or University of Washington, there was a hiring freeze for any research coordinator and research manager for sure. So it's a difficult time. Okay, and as Swedish, things a little bit different because we got the Paul Allen grant, so we're still hiring. But again, well, our hospital doesn't sponsor visa, so I mean, have some people who contacted us, but basically they need visa, so they couldn't come here. I don't know whether Fred Hodge resumed the hiring yet, but there was a hiring freeze, and even as a physician, as an investigator, we were prohibited to go to any meeting, including ASCO. We were not allowed to, use our CME money, for conference, or even a grant money we cannot use for travel. We have to save it for the university's good, sake. So it's difficult timing for sure, and with the a lower indirect costs, yes, the hiring it is gonna be more competitive to get a job. Yeah. So I would say that, just, it's the same thing for pharmaceutical company, I think, right? Because I'm right. By the way, I think starting from tomorrow, there's gonna be tariff for all the pharmaceutical company drugs that are made abroad, right? I don't know whether that affects Pfizer, but it's definitely gonna reduce the profit margin for some companies. So it's gonna be difficult for companies to hire some new grads. And I don't know, but I have seen a lot of companies doing layoffs, right? So it's gonna just become difficult wherever you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Trump is creating a lot of uncertainty, and then I don't think anyone in the industry or anyone at Pfizer know what exactly will happen. But another thing I want to point out is that we are not really relying on any federal funding. So to us, most of the layoff in the industry is more related to the market itself, right? So in general, the biotech industry has not been doing well for the past 2 years, I think. So that's the performance of the stock is below average compared to other sectors. The investment are less. So that's why it drive a lot of layoff from last year all the way to this year. I think maybe it's getting a little bit better. Yeah. I mean, but I'm not going to say that all the pharmaceutical company will generate more revenue next year because there's a lot of policy uncertainty around this. But yeah, I don't think we are directly impacted by specific policy that was just made this year.
Yeah, I think that's pretty tough. I echo what you just said, and when I was at UMass, we also had a hire freeze, and we couldn't enroll any new PhD students for the upcoming semester and all that. And I think John brought up one point, but I just want to say, if they touch Medicare, Medicaid, then certainly the margin of the pharmaceutical will certainly get affected, at some point. So, yeah, I hate to end 2-hour seminar with a bleak question. Kevin, can you give us some more of an upbeat question?
Well, Kevin's still a PhD student, so
everyone.
promising.
Yeah. And,
I mean, I still need like two more years to graduate, so it's just hard for me because I know some of my like cohort or my peers. I mean, if they have a faster speed and they're ready to graduate, I know this is definitely a very difficult time right now. But I mean, at the same time, some of my pretty outstanding peer also get like internship, and I think he will get like a return offer in a pharmaceutical company. So I mean, it really depends. But I mean, in terms to like international graduate, I think right now it's just hard to book because of the H-1B issue.
Yeah. Get your green card. If you are from the Academic Institute, get your green card now. Don't wait, right? H-1B is going through a lot of challenge. Yeah, and then it will continue.
I actually want to thank John for that. I owe John for that for sure. I think John knows this very well. So guys, so all the guys, ladies in the audience, okay, you might not know this, but you might be qualified for green card. I didn't know this until John told me so, and we actually, when I applied within 4 months, I got my green card. I might be an outlier, but I didn't know I could have got a green card. What if I didn't know that and I actually got a J1 visa, and right now I still don't have my green card.
You're
If I had
probably
done that.
practicing in Alabama if you got a
It's
J1
probably,
visa.
and it's still doing waiver, right? So that
You're earning
John's
$1 million in
recommendation
Alabama.
literally saved my life. Like, yeah, it's very different. My life will have looked very different without John's advice. You might be qualified for a green card. So, you can just go to any attorney, immigration attorney, and ask for a free evaluation. It's free. And if they tell you that you can, and for example, like some attorney, they will give you, approval or refund. If they have the confidence to do that, then you just fire away, just apply. Yeah. You might not know you are you are worth a green card. At that time, I only had 4 papers. I was like, how could I, get a green card with 4 papers? And I only one of them, I was like first author, and then my lawyer told me, well, I got like 300 citation. And that's actually because one paper got cited like 160 times, and thanks to my mentors, I was like a 4th author on that.
Yeah.
So thanks to my mentor, really. But because of that paper, I got a green card within 4 months. Yeah.
Yeah, and John also wrote me that one of the letter recommended there for my I-140 application. So kudos to that. We're two minutes over time. But if there's any last minute, there is actually last minute question. Would you recommend PhD students to do internship in pharmaceutical in the 4th year if you're interested, or would you recommend doing postdoc for a couple years before going into industry?
I think it will work both ways. I think the best bet you have is like once you graduate, if you already have your green card and you graduate, you can start looking for a job in the industry, and while you work as a postdoc, right? And then if your postdoc are promising, you're doing good progress, you may actually like be hired as a senior scientist if you are a senior postdoc, right? And then that will help you climb the ladder before you join the industry. And then if you have a good opportunity in the industry, you can just leave right after you graduate for your PhD and then go directly. I mean, I think that postdoc is a buffer. To me, I would see postdoc as a buffer. You can jump ship anytime you want. And then that sort of give you some kind of window for you to find the industry job, because industry job, the market is different year by year. I mean, now I think it's getting a little bit better than last year, but the past 2 years was really, really bad.
Yeah, I think the other thing John often says that I just gonna quote him on that that a lot of the time the reorganization, they often term that reorganization is often involving more of the translational basic science folks, and clinical folks with clinical function tend to have a little bit more of a job security. And the same same with academia, where I think a lot of the clinical staff with Ronan, they tend to have a bit more job security because they're generating revenue with the physician. They're helping you, seeing the patient, screening the patient, nurse navigator, helping you put the patient on the trial. So they're generating some revenue versus the scientist who's could be in a tough spot.
Yeah. I mean, so far, like Pfizer laid off thousands of people, but the development team has not been touched. We're actually hiring.
Yeah. So something to think about. It's not like you need to do something you don't like. All right. But great question, and thank you. I'm glad that Ronan brought out that we should be a bit more interactive. If without any further question, I think I could quickly wrap up. We're glad that we covered the foundation of the clinical trial. We kind of discussed all the different roles, and we also got into how we get a foot in either academia or industry. And as we wrap up, I want to thank our panelists, Dr. John Liu and Dr. Ronan Hsieh, for sharing their expertise and perspective. Kevin, you want to take it away from here, or?
Yeah, I think everything is down, and I think I will give both of you like a certificate. I know that will be like a PDF file later. Yeah, but I mean that's just our process. Yeah. So thank you all the audience, and thank you all the panelists. Yeah. And thank you the moderator, everyone. Yeah. And please feel free to answer the survey, and we will send the email, and we will put our videos after in our Facebook and YouTube channel. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for joining. Have a good evening. Happy Friday. Happy Saturday.
Yeah,
Back,
have a
happy
great
weekend.
weekend. Bye bye.